After weeks of speculation surrounding the shocking murder of Charlie Kirk, the world was stunned when Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré finally broke his silence. But no one expected the name that came next. Tyler Robinson. In a moment filled with raw truth and emotion, Traoré revealed details that left audiences in shock, the internet buzzing, and commentators speechless. This video takes you inside the moment that changed everything. The powerful words, the emotional reactions, and the twist no one saw coming. The world was on edge. News outlets replayed the same grainy footage of Charlie Kirk's sudden death, but answers never came. For 7 long days, speculation filled the silence. Commentators argued endlessly. Some blamed shadowy foreign powers. Others whispered of betrayal from within. Families of supporters lit candles outside churches. On social media, hashtags like Durline Justice for Kirk and R, who killed Charlie, trended nonstop. Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré stayed quiet. That silence shook many. Why would a young African leader known for his fiery honesty say nothing? Whispers began that maybe he knew more than the world suspected. His allies urged patience, but the streets buzzed with rumors. Every hour, the pressure grew. By the 6th day, major U.S. networks sent reporters to Ouagadougou camping outside the State House. Crowds formed, hoping for a glimpse of Traoré. His face appeared only once through the tinted window of a convoy. The look in his eyes, though brief, said everything. Heavy, burdened, but resolved. The question no one could silence was this. When Ibrahim finally speaks, what will he reveal? And deep down, people feared the answer would be more shocking than they could bear. On the 7th day, at exactly 7:00 p.m. local time, the announcement dropped. President Ibrahim Traoré will address the nation live. Phones buzzed across continents. CNN broke its program. Fox News ran a countdown clock. In living rooms from Washington to Lagos, families huddled in front of their screens. This wasn't just Burkina Faso's news anymore. It was the world's. Inside the State House studio, technicians moved nervously. Cameras focused on the simple desk draped in the Burkina Bay flag. No teleprompter was prepared. Observers whispered that the president insisted on speaking from the heart, not from a script. When Traoré walked in, the atmosphere shifted. He wore his signature camouflage uniform, but his face carried unusual weight. Behind him, a portrait of Thomas Sankara stood tall, symbolizing justice and courage. He sat down, folded his hands, and for a moment said nothing. That silence pierced more deeply than any words. Viewers leaned forward, breath held. Finally, with a voice steady yet thick with emotion, Traoré began, "Tonight, I speak not only as a son of Africa, but as a brother to all who believe in freedom. The world deserves the truth about Charlie Kirk." The room went still. Traoré's eyes darkened as he continued. For 1 week, you have been told half-truths. For 1 week, the guilty hoped silence would protect them. But silence is betrayal. Tonight, I will not betray. Murmurs filled living rooms across America. Journalists in studios froze, waiting for the revelation. Then came the name no one expected. Charlie Kirk was killed by a 22-year-old radical. Tyler Robinson. The words cut like a knife. Shockwaves spread instantly. Tyler Robinson, a young man from a Republican family in Ohio, a name not linked to extremists. At least not until now. Traoré paused, his voice trembling for the first time. This was not random. Tyler confessed through his father after a 33-hour manhunt. He was misled, poisoned with lies, but the hands guiding him were not his alone. They belonged to puppeteers, those terrified of youth awakening. Gasps erupted worldwide. In studios, anchors struggled to speak. On Twitter, the hashtag Tyler Robinson exploded within minutes. And yet the most haunting part was not the name, it was the sorrow in Traoré's voice. He spoke not with rage, but with heartbreak, as if mourning a life twisted into darkness. The world realized this was only the beginning. As the name Tyler Robinson spread like wildfire, journalists scrambled for answers. Who was this 22-year-old? Why would he do such a thing? The shock only deepened when Tyler's father, a weary Ohio factory worker, came forward. His voice cracked as he faced local reporters. My boy, he came home shaking. He told me he couldn't live with the blood on his hands. I called the police myself. No parent should ever make that call. The confession broke hearts. Here was a man caught between duty and love, forced to hand his own son over to authorities. Neighbors remembered Tyler as polite, quiet, even helpful at church events. But online, traces of a darker path appeared. Forums filled with anger, radical slogans, and whispers of manipulation. By the time the father's words hit primetime television, tears flowed across living rooms. Parents everywhere imagined themselves in his shoes, wondering if they could bear such a weight. And still, one chilling question hung over the world. Who pushed Tyler into this abyss? The father's tip triggered one of the most intense manhunts in recent American history. For 33 sleepless hours, federal agents scoured highways, safe houses, and remote cabins. Helicopters combed the skies, their spotlights slicing the night. Every update felt like a movie unfolding in real time. On Twitter, live trackers marked possible sightings. People refreshed feeds endlessly, clinging to every rumor. Some prayed Tyler would be caught alive. Others wanted swift justice. At dawn on the second day, agents cornered him near an abandoned gas station. Surrounded, exhausted, Tyler finally surrendered. His face was pale, eyes hollow, as if the life had already drained from him. But what struck observers most wasn't his capture. It was what he whispered to agents before being led away. Witnesses claimed he muttered, "They told me it would change the world. They told me Charlie had to fall." Those words added fuel to a raging fire. Who were they? And what forces had twisted the mind of a young man into carrying out such a devastating act? When Traoré's speech and Tyler's capture collided in headlines, the world erupted. Commentators struggled to keep up with the flood of emotion and speculation. CNN's panel sat in silence for nearly 30 seconds after replaying Traoré's voice. Fox anchors' eyes welled up as they spoke of betrayal and loss. In Europe, newspapers ran front-page banners with one word: puppets. On the streets of Ouagadougou, thousands gathered outside the state house holding candles and waving both Burkina Faso and American flags. The scene was surreal. Two continents mourning together, united by tragedy. Meanwhile, in Tyler's hometown, anger and grief tore through the community. Some blamed politics, others blamed shadowy powers. Churches filled with worshipers, praying for the Kirk family, for America, even for Tyler's broken soul. But above all the noise, one message rang clearest: the raw humanity in Traoré's tone. He didn't gloat. He didn't blame blindly. He spoke of sorrow, of a young man misled, and of a world being pulled apart by fear. For millions, that sincerity hit harder than any headline. It was no longer just about politics. It was about humanity itself. In the hours after Tyler's arrest, investigators uncovered a chilling timeline. His laptop revealed months of encrypted chats with faceless accounts. They promised him purpose, painted Kirk as an enemy of progress, and convinced him he was part of a world-changing mission. Neighbors described Tyler as lonely, restless, always scrolling his phone late into the night. His father admitted he noticed the change, but believed it was just politics. The truth was far darker. Tyler was swallowed by a machine built to prey on vulnerable minds. When this detail broke on the news, parents across America wept. Many whispered the same thought: that could have been my son. Meanwhile, Traoré's silence after naming Tyler grew heavier. Commentators expected rage, but insiders hinted he was preparing something deeper, something not just for Burkina Faso, but for the world. The story was no longer about one young man's mistake. It was about how entire systems profit from tearing young lives apart. The following evening, Traoré appeared again on state television. His voice carried both grief and resolve. Charlie Kirk, he said slowly, stood for the right of young people, whether in Africa or America, to speak without fear. For that they silenced him. But death cannot silence truth. Then came the announcement no one expected. He would award Charlie Kirk posthumously the Order of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's highest honor. The award was reserved for heroes who fought imperialism and defended human dignity. Never before had it been offered to an American conservative figure. The declaration struck like lightning. Crowds in Ouagadougou erupted into applause and tears. Across the U.S., even Kirk's fiercest rivals paused, humbled by the symbolism. For Traoré, this wasn't about politics. It was about bridging continents against those who profit from division. His words turned grief into a spark of unity, shaking the foundations of both African and Western discourse. Within hours of the announcement, social media lit up on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. One phrase dominated feeds: Traoré for Kirk. At first, it spread among Kirk's supporters touched by Traoré's unexpected tribute. But soon, young Africans, Europeans, and even critics began using it, marveling at the courage of a leader who spoke with such raw humanity. Memes, prayer videos, and emotional testimonies flooded timelines. Commentators were stunned. For decades, political lines between Africa and American conservatives seemed impossible to cross. Yet in tragedy, an unlikely bridge was forming. Clips of Traoré's speech circulated, showing his voice cracking when he spoke of youth awakening. Influencers replayed the moment millions of times. Churches in Texas prayed openly for Burkina Faso, while mosques in Ouagadougou prayed for America. The internet buzzed louder than ever before. But beneath the hashtags lay something deeper. The first signs of a global solidarity movement born out of heartbreak. And still everyone knew the most powerful twist was yet to come. By the fourth night after Traoré's speech, the hashtag had evolved from a trend into a movement. Protesters gathered in front of U.S. embassies carrying placards with Kirk's photo on one side and Traoré's face on the other. They shouted not in anger but in sorrowful unity. Stop dividing the youth. Let us breathe. Let us live free. In Washington, senators held emergency briefings. Some dismissed the wave as internet noise. Others warned it could destabilize alliances. One commentator whispered on air, "For the first time, an African leader has more credibility among American conservatives than some of our own." Corporate sponsors and lobbyists who once fueled ideological battles began to worry. Every hour the movement grew, exposing the frailty of their control. The murder that was meant to silence had done the opposite. And at the center of it all was Ibrahim Traoré, calm, unflinching, and increasingly seen as a moral voice in a sea of political noise. On the fifth day, an extraordinary moment unfolded. Cameras captured Charlie Kirk's widow, pale but composed, entering a quiet church in Ohio. Moments later, escorted by plainclothes officers, Tyler Robinson's father slipped into the same pews. For a breathless moment, the world froze. Would there be confrontation, anger, rejection? Instead, what came next brought tears to millions watching. Kirk's widow reached out first, her hand trembling. Tyler's father, broken with guilt, grasped it with both hands. The two wept silently side by side, one grieving a husband stolen, the other grieving a son consumed by lies. The image went viral within minutes. Commentators called it the handshake that humbled the nation. Churches replayed it. Traoré himself, watching from Burkina Faso, paused his schedule to reflect. This, he whispered to aides, is what they feared most. Humanity uniting in pain. In that church, revenge melted into something higher. A message had been sent. Healing could only begin when grief was shared. As the world clung to images of unity, Traoré dropped another revelation. Standing before Parliament in Ouagadougou, he declared that Charlie Kirk had been preparing for a 2026 summit, a historic meeting between African youth leaders and American conservatives. The plan had been kept secret, known only to a handful of close allies. Its goal to create a bridge between young people who refused to be chained by either imperial control or partisan manipulation. Their fear, Traoré said firmly, was not of Charlie Kirk. It was of the alliance he sought to build, an alliance of the free-minded, the young, the brave. Gasps filled the chamber. Within minutes, international networks ran the headline. Secret Summit revealed. For the first time, people began to see the murder not as an isolated act, but as part of a larger battle for influence. And now, because of Traoré's words, the vision Kirk died for had been resurrected, louder than ever. The twist was clear. Kirk's dream hadn't ended in tragedy. It was only just beginning. On the sixth day, a hush fell over Ouagadougou. Streets were filled with men, women, and children carrying white flowers. In the national square, a giant stage was draped in both the Burkina Faso and American flags. The world tuned in as President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward to deliver the Order of Thomas Sankara to honor Charlie Kirk. Kirk's widow appeared on screen, standing with her two children, tears rolling down her cheeks. Traoré bowed his head as the medal was placed over a framed portrait of Kirk. This honor, he declared, is not only for a man, but for a bridge between continents, between free spirits, between those who refused to kneel before globalist chains. The crowd erupted into song. Old liberation hymns mixed with chants of Kirk's name. Across the ocean, American churches rang bells in unison. Even commentators who once doubted Traoré whispered that history was being written that day. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a covenant, a pledge that grief would not be wasted. And as the cameras panned across weeping faces, millions watching online wept with them. The unity unsettled those who thrived on division. Within hours, powerful figures in Washington, Paris, and Brussels released carefully worded statements. Some accused Traoré of exploiting tragedy. Others warned that his words risked destabilizing global relations. But their cold language clashed with the raw emotion gripping ordinary people. On talk shows, parents called in sobbing, saying they finally saw a leader who spoke like a father, not a politician. Analysts admitted on live TV that they had no script for this moment. Behind closed doors, think tanks scrambled. Lobbyists feared that if young Americans and Africans found common ground, their influence would crumble. Leaked memos revealed panic. If this alliance grows, our hold on youth narratives will collapse. Ironically, the harder elites tried to discredit Traoré, the more authentic he seemed. The contrast was too stark. One man speaking with heart versus institutions speaking with rehearsed indifference. The backlash, instead of silencing the movement, poured gasoline on the fire. The people had chosen who to believe. By the seventh day, the movement transcended politics. In New York, thousands lit candles in Times Square. In Lagos, a sea of youth marched with placards reading, "Kirk lives on. Traoré speaks truth." In Paris, students draped the Birkenbay flag across statues once symbolizing empire. Social media overflowed with personal stories, young men and women confessing how close they had come to despair, how Traoré's words gave them hope. The hashtag #TroyFork was no longer just trending. It was etched into hearts. Even celebrities joined. Singers dedicated songs. Athletes raised fists during matches. News anchors choked on tears as they tried to read updates. It felt less like a movement and more like an awakening. The murder that was meant to divide had in 1 week united unlikely worlds. And yet, everyone knew this was not the end. Traoré had one more truth to share. One final revelation that would shake the very ground beneath the powerful. The world braced itself. The fire had been lit, and there was no going back. On the seventh night, Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the balcony of the State House overlooking a sea of candles. The square below was overflowing. Tens of thousands of Burkinabe stood shoulder to shoulder, their voices hushed, waiting across the ocean. Millions watched online. Traoré lifted a single sheet of paper. His tone was low, deliberate. "Brothers and sisters, this week we saw pain. We saw betrayal. But we also saw something greater. Unity born from tragedy. Charlie Kirk and I had plans for 2026, plans that terrified those who profit from division." He paused, the crowd silent, holding its breath. "They killed him to bury a dream. But today you prove dreams do not die. They rise, carried by the people." The words echoed through the night, rippling across continents. In living rooms, families clutched hands. Commentators fell into silence. Even the critics who doubted him admitted something historic was happening. Traoré folded the paper, his voice breaking slightly. "I grieve for Kirk, I grieve for Tyler, but I will never grieve for hope." Then came the revelation, no one for all. Traoré leaned closer to the microphone, his voice trembling with conviction. Charlie Kirk left behind more than speeches. Before his death, he signed a letter to me. In it, he wrote, "If they silence me, promise you'll continue." Gasps erupted across the square. A giant screen displayed the letter. Kirk's signature unmistakable. His words, raw and prophetic, cut through the night like a blade. The crowd wept openly. In America, Kirk's supporters broke down live on air. Even his critics could not deny the power of a man who seemed to speak from beyond the grave. Traoré raised the letter high. "I give you my promise. Tonight the summit will happen. Africa and America's youth will meet, and Charlie Kirk will be there. Not in body, but in spirit, in purpose, in the courage he awakened." The square erupted, not in cheers, but in tears and chants of "Kirk, Traoré, Kirk, Traoré." It was no longer just a memorial. It was a vow carved into history. The following morning, the world woke to a new reality. Churches in Dallas rang bells. Youth in Ouagadougou painted murals of Kirk and Sankara side by side. The internet flooded with one phrase: "Dreams don't die." For 1 week, grief had turned into solidarity. And at the heart of it all was Ibrahim Traoré. Young, unshaken, and now seen as a leader, not just for Burkina Faso, but for anyone who believed in freedom and truth. In his closing words to the world, he spoke directly to the camera. To those watching, whether in Africa, America, or anywhere, remember this: unity is stronger than chains. Do not let them divide you. Carry this fire forward. Viewers wept. Families hugged. A moment of silence swept across timelines before the comments exploded with love and pain. Now, my beloved viewers, if this story has touched your heart, if it has made you cry or opened your eyes, I ask you subscribe, like, and comment below. Tell the world how you felt. Let your voice join this movement. Your comment is not just words. It is part of history. Let us flood the internet with hope, with unity, and with truth. Together, we keep the dream alive.